Welcome, everybody. Today, my guest is Tyler King, who is the Authorized Principal Broker at Windermere Realty Trust, the Moreland office. I've known Tyler for a number of years through various capacities. Tyler is a great guy, a genuine guy, highly competent. And Tyler, thanks for joining us. Today, we get to learn a bit more about you and what brought you into real estate and what's influenced how you engage your customers. So, Tyler, thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm really excited you invited me to do this. I'm excited for our conversation.
You kind of have a unique path into real estate. You grew up around it. First off, we share some Portland roots. You and I are of similar age, of similar vintage, and kind of had our high school years and growing up years in the 1990s in Portland, which is awesome. Southeast Portland, to be specific. I have my thoughts on the matter, but for you, what do you remember, and what was it like growing up in Southeast Portland in the 1990s?
It was awesome. I mean, it really was
Agreed.
awesome. I'm an East Side guy through and through. Pretty much born and raised in Southeast. Then we kind of migrated to Milwaukee and then ultimately Clackamas. But I think Portland at that time was just smaller,
Yeah,
and it may drive my wife nuts because every time I go out, if there's someone who grew up in Portland, I'm probably about 2 degrees away from them, and I
totally,
gotta talk to them and see how they're
totally.
doing.
My wife says the same thing. She's like, "We're gonna go somewhere. You're gonna run into somebody."
It always
Um,
happens.
okay, and you have a music background. I love music and had my fair share of concerts at La Luna back in the day. But tell us a little bit about your upbringing in terms of music, because that was an important part of your role early on.
Oh, huge. Yeah, so my mom actually was a piano teacher for many years, so I was always surrounded by music. And I started playing cello in elementary school, and eventually went down that path. I played in the Portland Youth Philharmonic. I also played in the Metropolitan Youth Symphony. Played at the Clackamas High School Orchestra, which in the '90s was epic. We were like top five in the state. It was a really amazing experience. And then come to high school, I kind of discovered my guitar, and it was a lot lighter to carry around,
Also a
and
little cooler. Let's be honest. The guitar and
yeah, a
cello, two
little,
different.
a lot cooler, a lot
Right.
cooler. I mean, the viola players dug me, but no one else did. And so I kind of shifted to that. And like my first band in high school was called the Jam Jar Theory, and we were essentially a They Might Be Giants ripoff band. I played acoustic guitar, he played accordion, and we wore leisure suits. We won the Battle of Bands twice at our high school. People just loved it. We sung funny songs about dirty underwear and things like that. So
Sure.
it was a great time. And it was the '90s. Like we would go down and play like the Paris Theater and places like this, or just go to a party or play on the corner, whatever it
Yeah.
was. We actually got a gig at Barbati's Pan when we were still in high school.
That's
Oh,
legit.
yeah, and it was crazy how we got it. We were just hanging out in downtown Portland at like 10 o'clock at night. And the owner of Barbati's, the Trey, who owns Voodoo Donuts, or
Oh,
he's
sure.
involved,
Yeah.
he heard us. We used to take choir songs because I was in choir too, and like change the words to make them funny. And we were just like going around and doing this kind of barbershop quartet funny songs about inappropriate things that I won't mention here. He ran us across the street to an alley. We sang for him, and he's like, "We're gonna sign you up." And we got a Monday night gig at 11 after the stand-up comedian. It was great.
That's awesome. But you continued on with other bands. Your music kind of career, we'll call it, evolved. Like, how far did you get? How far did your music career, your band take you?
Well, if from Portland standards, I think we went pretty far. We played all of the cool places. We played Satyricon, we played Barbades a few times. We did some little tours down the Bay Area. We played a show at KZSU, the Stanford radio station. Granted, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, but I guarantee you at least two people heard it. But it was a really fun experience. It's at that time being in a band in Portland, it was a small community, and we were part of this kind of space rock community. But I eventually started looking around me and seeing what success looked like the bands around us having success, and It wasn't as much upside as I thought. None of them are on the cover of Rolling Stone and, driving in a van across the country and smelling each other's odors and stuff. I was like, well, maybe this isn't the path for me. And so after about 4 years, I guess 3 years, I was like 21. I eventually had an epiphany and I was like, I should go to college. And I did. And for some reason, Southern Oregon University took me. And I went down there for a year and a half, eventually transferring to New York City at Hunter College.
Yeah. Okay. So part of what I love about hearing stories is connecting how your experiences early on influence how you conduct your business today. And it's not a direct correlation, but you spend a lot of time jamming. You spend a lot of time music, both in a band sense, but also you mentioned you played in the youth philharmonic. You participated in the high school band. How has music shaped your real estate career in terms of how you engage your clients?
Yeah, I think it actually has done a lot for me. I think well, I think good musicians are very good listeners. A lot of
Mm,
times when you're in a band setting, or if you're doing an improv or a jam or whatever it is, it's almost more about what you don't play than what you do play. And I think listening, you have two ears and one mouth, I think that really shaped how I can operate when I'm dealing with a lot of different personalities. I mean, in a real estate transaction, how many people are we dealing with? We're dealing with like 20 people between the inspector, the title company, the loan officer, the inspector, everybody, and learning how to listen and be a good hang. Like the my friends that became very successful musicians or are still gigging today, they're the ones that were the best hang. They weren't necessarily the best bass player, but they
sure.
were the best hang. And you could be in a van, smell their odors, and not hate them for it at the end of the day, you know? And so just being a good hang and understanding how to do that and dealing with different personalities, because music, it's a very intimate thing that you're sharing with your buddies, you know? Like I wrote a song and like listen to this song about love or like breaking up with my girlfriend. I mean, these are personal things and you have to have it's a little bit of a trapeze act without a net and you have to be safe in that place, but you also have to listen and be a good hang.
Well, it's interesting you say that because in preparation for this interview, I went in and read a lot of the reviews that your customers, and you have a ton of five-star reviews, by the way. But one of the themes that consistently came out of this was that aside from all of your technical expertise and competency and professionalism and attention to detail, time and time again, people, in fact, I'll read one here. It says, plus, he keeps things light, has fun throughout the entire process, making what can be a stressful experience feel much more enjoyable. We've done transactions together. I've also been in plenty of committee meetings with you, and I think you're so good at that. You're good at approaching a very serious subject, and not making light of it per se, but approaching it in sort of an informal way that makes it approachable for everyone to participate. So I'd say that's one of your superpowers for sure.
And I think that's important because these when someone's purchasing a home or selling a home, this is a big freaking deal. Like
Yeah,
this can be very, very stressful. There's no reason for me to make it more stressful than it already is. And I
yeah,
see, you know, I like the analogy that of the duck on the water. Like it looks like it's just going like this, but underneath its
mm.
feet are going crazy. And I'm doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and I'm trying to take on as much of that stress myself because I know what to expect. I know what's going to happen. I try my best to prepare them for everything. But you know what? When things get really stressful, sometimes a good laugh goes a long way. And we
Yeah,
remember that we're human, we're doing the best we can, we're working towards a goal here, and we're gonna do everything we can to get there. And if we don't get there, there's gonna be a reason why, and we're gonna pivot and go a different direction if we have to. There's no reason to make people, if someone's already tense, we don't need to make them tenser.
right.
It's just not worth it. And I do think that, especially as I've gotten more experienced, I'm better at that balancing act because you don't want to make it a joke either because it's not
Right.
a joke. It's super. This is a big freaking
It's a
deal.
lot of money. Yeah, yeah.
But we can also have some fun with this because I want to be a good hang and I want to attract clients that are also a good hang. And like if I'm sitting at a home inspection and they decide to be there for the whole 4 hours, you know, I'm gonna crack some jokes, man. It's gonna happen.
I might just start showing up to your home inspections. This sounds entertaining to me.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wow, you are a great hang, and I think you definitely find that balance of, doing the serious things that need to be done seriously, but in a style and manner that's very approachable and keeps it light. So well done. So let's talk about one other aspect of you growing up, which is that your parents were both teachers, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
and they invested in real estate. So as a kid, you had a front row seat to kind of see how it works. And it's funny because when you told me that in our pre-interview, I was thinking about Rich Dad Poor Dad and the Wealthy Barber book, which are like sort of the classic. And you don't have to make a lot of money necessarily to invest in real estate, but if you invest in real estate, chances are you're going to build a lot of wealth later on. So, what was that like for you growing up as a kid and watching your parents invest? Yeah, I mean, what lessons did that help you take and carry on in your real estate career?
Well, they were really my folks. They were very good with money. I mean, like you said, they taught in the David Douglas School District for 25 years. They never made a lot of money, but every couple of years they would invest in a very unsexy, investment property, a duplex or a single family home or whatever it was. And during the summertime, they have free labor with me and my brother and my sister. There was a lot of that going on, and this was not glamorous stuff. But over the long run, I see them retired now, and they are living very comfortably
Hmm.
for two retired teachers. They've pared down to just 6 units now, but they made really smart investments that cash flowed, that made sense, and were long-term holds.
Hmm.
I tell folks now, if someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, I got a way to make a lot of money really fast in real estate," I say, go the other way. That's not
Absolutely.
there's ways to do it, but that's a very narrow band of people and situations that happens. If you can look at the 10, 15-year holding period, you're going to do very, very well. And don't get caught up in, the glitz and the glamour of it. Get caught up in the way the numbers work and what you can take on and manage yourself and make it work. That's really what I took away with their investment style. And I think I try to relay that to my clients too. It's like, let's take some of this emotion out of it here. This makes a lot of sense because if you took out a 15-year mortgage on this and your kid, is 5 now, we're going to have college paid for at the end of this, right? Right there in that house.
That's
And
right.
it's going to take some work. There's going to be a broken water heater, there's going to be a busted pipe or something, but you roll along with it and it's ultimately going to be a great performer for you. It's better
So
than
yeah,
Bitcoin, right?
absolutely. And I was a baseball player, and so the my mentor for me, who was my older cousin, he's like my older brother, early on said, Evan, he said, investing in real estate is not about hitting a home run at every at bat. You're just hitting little bloop singles here and there, but you're doing it every single year, and you end up in the Hall of Fame. And that was sort of like the analogy that worked for me. Is you're absolutely right. It's not glamorous. It's not sexy, but it is so reliable, right? If you can figure out a way to acquire one, acquire two, acquire three, you're going to wake up 10, 15, 20 years from now, and a whole lot of problems are going to be solved because you're going to have cash flow and equity that you can lean on if you need to.
Don't play like Sammy Sosa, play like Moneyball, you know?
There, there you go. I love it. Okay, so what I'm curious about is, we're going to get to your investment legacy as well. But did they ever sit you down and explain to you how investing in real estate, or did you just happen to sort of witness and learn through your experience watching them do it?
I think it was more just watching them
Yeah.
do it. There was never real estate economics 101 at the dinner table necessarily. But I was always hearing the conversations of when the year was up and we're talking about rent increases. And one thing about my parents, they always kept rents way below. Once I became a professional, they started consulting with me a little bit more. They're like, well, we're thinking about raising the rent over there on the condo. And I was like, okay, what are you getting? And it's like, well, 12.50 right now, thinking $25 this year. And I was like, well, market's probably close to 16.50. I think you'll be fine with that.
There's the appraiser, and you'll get to that piece too. Okay, so you get to witness that. You go to Southern Oregon. You transfer to Hunter College in New York City. So you go
Yep.
back, head back east, and graduate from college. And then, oh, one other note: in those summers, you went up to Maine and you helped your aunt and uncle, and they had some investment properties up there as well, correct?
Yeah, so I spent the summer right after high school and the summer right before I moved to New York. So when I transferred out of Southern Oregon, I spent that summer in Maine. It was a great experience. We actually built a house in
Wow.
Muscongas Bay on an island, so there was no running water or electricity. We took a boat to the island every day, and it was a fun experience. And and I tell you what, those cabins are still standing today,
Good
you
for you.
know. But yeah, and then and they had vacation rentals, and they would do development projects and long-term income stuff. Just everything real estate in Maine there. And Maine, I don't know if you've ever been to Maine. It's an interesting part of the country for sure. They definitely talk funny.
It's funny. I've only ever been to the very southern western tip because we've got some family in New Hampshire. So just
Okay.
the very edge there. But beautiful area, by the way. I love the coastline.
Yeah.
Okay, so you end up in New York. You graduate from college, and time to get a job. Tell us about that.
Well, it's New York, and so you graduate college, you're going in either into finance, insurance, or real estate. And based on my sort of intellectual capacity, real estate looked to be the most attractive. I mean, honestly, I was in the resource room at Hunter College, and there was a posting for real commercial real estate appraiser, and I was like, I could do that. That sounds fun. And I applied, and I got a job with Miller Cicero, which was affiliated with Miller Samuel, which is a Jonathan Miller is probably the most famous appraiser in the country
Mm,
on the residential side. He writes
mm.
these market reports for Douglas Elliman and is quoted a lot. He has lots of clippings of newspapers of his quotes and his picture up on his wall. And you know, getting it was. I remember applying for the job, and my boss, John Cicero, he was just like, "I'm a little worried about this whole office thing. I'm looking at your history. You know, you worked in the restaurant biz, you're in bands, you worked on a tree nursery. Like, are you going to be able to come to the office and sit?" And I'm like, I think so, John. I think I'm ready for this. I think I'm ready for air conditioning. I think this is going to be great. But it was the best thing to happen to me because being a commercial appraiser, like you get to deal with all sorts of different property types, and we were underwriting like new condo developments on the Williamsburg waterfront where I lived. And I was like looking at these holes in the ground that became, 300 unit condos and things like this. And from beginning to end, we're doing every phase of it. 2008 happened, and that was depressing in New York. That was ground zero. I remember sitting
Everywhere, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember just sitting in front of Bear Stearns one day, and I was like slurping a piece of pizza and just like watching people come out of Bear Stearns with like their box of their
What a
family
wow.
photos and stuff.
What a wild
It
experience.
was a total downer,
Yeah,
but but it worked for the appraisal business because when things are going up or things are going down, the appraisal business is busy, and things were
sure.
obviously going down, and
Yeah,
so banks were having to recalibrate everything. So we were busier than ever, and I was always kind of jealous of those big time brokers in New York doing these huge deals, but then I was like, well, they're doing zero now. At least I'm busy and I can pay my rent. Granted, I got two roommates, but I'm doing it.
sure.
And so we kept busy, and it just was, where and then the transition in 2008 was between from all this condo development. Developers have to build something. That's their job. So once
Yeah,
everything crashed, a lot of those got turned into rentals, but then a lot of them got into affordable housing. So I was getting under the hood on low-income housing tax credit deals and all this different bond financing and things like that. And so we kept busy, but I'm also like looking at retail strips in Long Island, and every day we're like every week we're going to a different part of the city and trying different things for lunch. And this guy I worked with, he knew every lunch spot in the city, and it was just absolutely fantastic. I was like, it's inspection day. Let's go.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, who would have known? But I think I would guess that one of the reasons that a lot of the reviews that your clients leave about your competency and negotiation skill is rooted fundamentally in the fact that, like, being an appraiser, especially a commercial appraiser, and you're appraising all these different types of properties, you have to have a very, very broad technical understanding of the fundamental value of real estate, right? And I think that, especially in the residential real estate space, there's so much emotion that goes
Mhm.
into decision making on the part of buyers and sellers, and that makes sense. I'm not here to say that that's wrong, but couple that with the ability to really technically underwrite and understand fundamental value of real estate. I mean, wow, what a pairing. And that sets you apart from what I can tell from a lot of your peers in the same space that don't have that same ability.
Yeah, and I will say that part of that has been something that I've had to learn a bit. I remember when I first got licensed, and it was just me and Carmel, my partner Carmel Seiler. Now we're a team here at Windermere, but we were just Carmel Seiler Realty. I kind of had in my head that I'm going to be the hotshot New York guy that knows a lot about real
Mm.
estate, and then I'm just going. And then she's like, "Well, where are the clients going to come from?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"I didn't really think about that side of the equation." And it's like they don't just come. And so it took me a while to sort of wrap my head around that aspect of it. I feel much more confident and comfortable with it now, but I didn't think about that all the way through. I was also, 30,
Yeah, right.
what do I know? I'm a 30-year-old guy,
Right.
I don't know anything, but
Right.
well, except for about real estate. That's
Yeah.
all I know a lot
Right.
about. But kind of melding that took some time for me to really figure out. Because especially at the beginning, a lot of my clients, I was really kind of focusing on the small investment property stuff or using a Plex as a first-time home buyer option. That's what I did. I fell in love with Plexes. I thought it was just made so much sense. And so I was really pushing that. I actually developed this proprietary algorithm where I do the top 10 Plex deals of the week. So I'd go into ARMLS, dump all of the new Plex listings, 2 to 4 units, into this spreadsheet. And I created this like index with all these different like adjustments it would make. And then I would rank them, and then I
Mm,
would put out to my sphere, all 9 of them,
brilliant.
this top 10 Plex deals. And it actually it was kind of gimmicky, but there was actually some science. I worked really hard on that algorithm, actually. I should try to dig that up and see. I'm curious to revisit it to see where my head was at back then on how
Yeah.
what made a
You
good
could go back
deal.
and record what the returns would look like.
Yeah, I should. I'd be like, hey, I was right. I was right. Well, it's been long enough. Everybody's made money in these deals
Exactly. You'd be
back
right.
in
You would be right. It's a
2012.
matter of degree at this point. Okay, so this demonstrates, Tyler, you have a very entrepreneurial mind and mindset. So you also, when you came back, were developing basically a mini REIT in some respects. You had come up with like a syndication platform. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, remember, this is like 2011, 2012. A lot of folks were saying, well, this is just part of the dead cat bounce. We haven't reached the bottom yet. We were shell shocked from 2008, and
Yeah.
rightfully so. I saw it completely different. I grew up my youngest years on basically 39th and Powell.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
I bought my duplex as my first home. I lived in one side, rented out the other on just off of Gladstone on Cora
Yep.
Drive, which is basically
Yep.
where 35th was. And I was looking around at these kind of Class B, Class C apartment buildings, kind of those Joe Weston special, like two
Yep.
level, like wood frame things. And I was like, there is so much upside to these things. I
Uh-huh.
just see so much upside. And so I basically put a marker on Cesar Chavez and Holgate and like
Yep.
looked out from there. And I was working with some hedge fund guys in New York. And, we went down the path, we got pretty far. If we did end up purchasing the stuff we had identified, we'd all be much wealthier than we are now. But it was a learning experience. The money kind of fell apart. People were on edge still in
Sure.
2012. And I learned a lot. And at the time, 30, I didn't have a lot of skin in the game for myself. That was an uphill battle. So it kind of fizzled out, but it was a good exercise. I did an amazing like market report on Portland for these Class B, Class C apartment buildings. We identified some great stuff, and it would have been great, but then it just kind of fizzled out. And kind of had to pivot to go to something to actually make some money,
Yeah,
to pay the rent and things like that. And then I also, soon after that, I started a construction company with my buddy, where we were building ADUs. Because I was like when ADUs were first kind of getting easier to build, and I had landlord clients that were looking for duplexes or triplexes or fourplexes, and the prices of these things were getting into these like 250, $300,000 a unit. And I was like, hey, you have a single family home here that you're renting out. At the time, we were able to build these things for like $150,000. I was like,
sure.
how do I put another unit in your backyard for
Yeah,
$150,000?
yeah.
And it made a lot of sense. And so we did that, and I did that for a few years. Realized the construction biz is wasn't really for me, and I wasn't swinging hammers or anything like that. I was more business development kind of stuff, but it was not. It wasn't. I was like, this is not. I don't have the machismo for this long term,
Right.
and so eventually, and the whole time I was kind of doing this residential brokerage stuff along the way. And it just kind of everything kind of distilled down until I was like, you know what? This is what I'm good at. This is what I enjoy. I mean, I love white BMWs and happy hours. This is where I should be. And that's where and then so basically since 2018, I would suppose, in the interim, I would flip a house here and there. Carmel and I did a couple of house flips together, just here and there when opportunities presented themselves. But since then, I've just been full time helping people buy and sell homes, or buy and sell investment property. And I think that it's where I'm at my best.
Well, I would agree. And again, your reviews say the same thing. In fact, there's one in particular where one of your clients writes that, hey, admittedly, I thought all realtors were overvalued. I ended up interviewing three. I went with Tyler, and I'm so happy that I did, and essentially changed this guy's mind. There's a lot of realtor value skeptics out there,
Oh yeah.
and I think those that have a chance to utilize yours because again, you are a great hang on one side. You have the social skills, you have the ability to communicate well. I know that you're super responsive in your communication, but you fundamentally have this backdrop of like a highly competent appraisal. You grew up in a family around investment. So fundamentally, you kind of also understand the technical aspects of value as well. It's a beautiful blend of two things. And I think that's I'm sure that's why people call you back and want to work with you again and refer to friends and family. I guess one question I have for you is that um, where do you think I would imagine for you that like value when it comes to investing in real estate, maybe it's a plex, maybe it's a house with the ability to add an ADU, or who knows what that may look like, might even be a little bit second nature to you, just given your background. But as you think about the general public out there, what do you think the biggest misunderstandings are around real estate investing, real estate value? I know it's a broad question, but
Yeah, broad question. I think there's a couple things at play. I think people misunderstand how the money works, just in general. Like I'm a real estate guy. I love using the bank's money,
hmm
That's the money I like to use. I mean, we have, we have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage in this country. It's as American as apple pie, and that's a tool that I just want everyone to leverage as best
hmm
they can. Because your home that you live in now could be an investment property down the road,
hmm hmm
and to think about it this way and use the bank's money. Like I think people forget that there's money out there, and especially when I was doing a lot more house flipping or investment stuff, I always say if there is a good deal, you can find the capital to do
hmm
it.
hmm
You're going to have to pay for it,
hmm
and you need to make sure it works. But the money finds good deals,
Yes.
and when I first started out, when I first moved back, the one thing I didn't have was a lot of money,
hmm
but I used a lot of other people's money
hmm
to make myself money, and I think that's something that a lot of folks on the investment side don't quite understand is how the power of leverage, the power of capital finding good deals and wanting to invest in them. And I
Yeah.
think that's where a disconnect is. And you don't see that in equities, you know what I
Right.
mean? You don't see that in the bond market. You don't see that in crypto.
Yep.
It's unique how the money works and how you have to piece it all together and create that capital stack, even if it's a capital stack of two things,
Right.
making it work.
Right. Well, I mean, of course, I'm biased to that answer, so thank you for adding that in. It's true, and it's so many things with buying real estate. I feel like are counterintuitive, right? And so it's like, well, if I'm going to buy this, I don't want to have debt because if I didn't have debt, my returns would be higher. And actually, that's not the case, right? I mean, the beauty of investing in real estate is that you get to keep 100% of the property's appreciation even if you levered, three-quarters of it or half of it, right? And that's where you start to measure cash on cash returns. Creating leverage or borrowing even just a little bit is really going to enhance the returns if your goal is to do that, right? If your goal is to invest for a return. So absolutely, I would say that's a great one, and one that does get often overlooked. All right, let's talk about your leadership because you are not just a realtor. You are highly active in leadership in the real estate industry. Not only are you the authorized principal broker at your branch there in Moreland for Windermere Realty Trust, how I got to know you was through your volunteering and working at PMAR, the Portland Metropolitan Association of Realtors, both as a director in terms of the board of directors, but also you're highly involved in the advocacy. And I know that you are highly involved in a lot of the things that go on in Clackamas County.
Mhm.
Why is that important for you? Why is your commitment to leadership important? And I would imagine that it also, goes back to you delivering a highly professional, and competent process to your clients. So speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, well, here's the way I look at it. Housing policy, housing decisions, as well as policies for small businesses being able to operate here. These decisions are going to get made.
Hmm.
Policies are going to be created. Ordinances are going to pass, laws are going to pass. This is going to happen.
Hmm.
And I want to make sure someone who's actually in the space, someone who
Hmm.
actually helps people buy or sell houses or buys and sells houses or because every realtor is their own little small business, right?
Hmm.
And decisions that affect that. I want to make sure someone who knows what they are talking about has a seat at the table. I think that's
Hmm.
very important because, listen, realtors, we're all very, very busy, and I understand that. We need to have somebody there. So I'm carrying the banner if I need to. People forget that these local municipalities and these counties, this is where the rubber meets the road. When we're talking about home values, we're talking about parks, we're talking about schools, we're talking about infrastructure. I was having a great conversation with Carmel the other day about I have this listing in Lake Oswego, and the street has a yellow line down the middle of it.
Hmm.
It's a 25-mile-an-hour street. And during the open house, I counted there was about 4 cars per hour. That was the car count that I was getting. This is not a busy street, but
Right.
because it has that yellow line, of the 12 showings we had that first week and a half, 9 of them said they didn't want to live on the busy road. And
Oh,
it's just perception.
yeah.
And so the city of Lake Oswego, whoever decided to paint that yellow line down that street, what they didn't realize is they probably took 5 to 10% of the value of every house on that street away.
Wow.
And I'm not exaggerating that. And so those are the type of decisions that kind of get made, and they are getting made in public, but they need someone like me or you. You do great advocacy work too at the table, pointing out, hey, just a point of information that's going to screw over everybody on that street. Maybe we
Yeah.
shouldn't do that,
Yeah. Let's make
So,
sure the traffic count is there if we're going to do that, right? Make sure
yeah,
it's supported.
yeah. And then it also comes back to I want to know what's going on. When
Mhm.
I show a house, say in Milwaukee, where I live, I sometimes I feel bad for these folks because they have to hear the whole history of Milwaukee and what my thoughts are on the current mayor and the city council and what
Sure.
what current the transportation safety plan that's being in the works and what that could lead to and what it might not lead to. I want to be intimately familiar in my community, but also in my client's community, so
Yeah.
they are making a good decision. I don't want them to call me 2 years later and say, I didn't know they were going to put a yellow line down my street here, and and if they get wind that they are, I will go and testify at their city council and tell them why they shouldn't do this because I am a frequent flyer. Like especially in Clackamas County. They're probably sick of me at this point.
No, that's appreciated, I'm sure. And I think, well, to your point, the reality is that a lot of these policymakers want to have input, right?
Mhm.
To your point, like there's decisions they're going to have to make, and and it's if they don't have someone from the industry or don't have someone that's intimately familiar with how real estate gets transacted and the decisions and how that can influence unintended consequences for homeowners, et cetera, then they get that feedback after the fact as well. So I think oftentimes we may not always agree with the decisions they arrive at, but I think most of them are pretty welcome. I feel like to getting feedback and getting constituent participation in the process. So and you're one of the most active ones that I know of in the community. So well done and thank you. What I also want to touch on your leadership role at Windermere Realty Trust. Again, you are an authorized principal broker there, which means that you oversee and are sort of the person that people come to, and this just speaks to your competency and professionalism and attention to detail. I'm curious to know from your perspective and your vantage point, you get to interact with a lot of different realtors in your office, and of course, practice yourself. What do you think separates a decent or average realtor today in 2026 from a great realtor that is hitting on all cylinders?
The short answer is caring, caring
Yeah.
about this industry, caring about your clients,
Mhm.
caring about your reputation. That's the short answer. I always say that it's it's not hard to make a very good living doing this, but
Mhm.
it's also just as easy to make zero.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
the delta of what you do between those things is not as great as people think. I think folks that look at it as a job that they need to continue to get better at as things change, as markets change, as rules change, the continuous improvement is where I see the separation.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of caring because you want to know how best to take care of your clients and make sure that they're protected every step of the way. And I believe your people, your database, your sphere, that is your business, and it's your job to take care of them. And
Mhm.
and it's not always real estate stuff. I tell my clients if you ever need something, I really you might want to just call me first because I probably have someone, whether it's a junk guy or a lawyer or a CPA or an arborist or we do a lot of stuff in these transactions, and I come across, and I'm a pretty social guy. I'm involved with a lot of organizations. I'm president of Milwaukee Rotary. I meet a lot of people. I'm trying to be a connector, and I think that's caring and being a connector and continuous improvement is really what separates the best of the best from the mediocre.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that this might be the unfortunate answer to the average ones out there is that I don't know if you can teach caring, but I do think that and it's one of the things I'm most thankful for. I'm so blessed to have a wonderful team that works around me and that we work together to support our clients. And the number one ingredient for each and every one of them is they care about the outcome. They care about the client. They care about doing a good job. And the thing is, if someone cares, you don't really have to show them how to do things all that much because they just kind of figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't care, I can show you how to do something, but if you're not at all tied to the outcome for that client, then you're not going to do it with your heart and soul anyway. So that's a great answer, by the way. Okay, so two final questions here. One is we're talking here in July of 2026. We are headed to the second half of the year. Um, what are you seeing in the Portland metro housing market right now as you analyze it as a realtor and a former appraiser? What are you seeing and what are the trends?
The biggest thing I've been seeing and this has been a while, I think since we had that sort of craziness in 2021 and then sort of the second half of 2022 when interest rates got back to normal, and we saw this normalization. I know it felt like the sky was falling, but it was actually we're just getting back to normal.
Yeah.
Um, the the discount for a home that needs work or has some functional obsolescence or some external obsolescence, like if it has one bathroom, it's on a road with a yellow line down it, or it needs a lot of work. I feel like the discount for houses that are in that category is greater than it's ever been. And I think that
Mm.
the premium paid for turnkey, ready to go move-in homes is greater than it's ever been. The
Wow.
delta between those two is the greatest I've ever seen it for as long as I've been in the business.
Wow.
And I think that's important for us to keep in our minds when we're talking to, especially the sellers and we're managing expectations, because the cream puffs here in Selwood, this zip code, the average days on market's 22.
Hmm.
And
Which
and
is relatively short if you're out there wondering what.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
when the overall market's 66, I think,
Right.
something like that. And if it's a dialed house in Selwood, you're getting multiple offers.
Hmm.
But if it's not a dialed house, it might take a little bit to sell. If it's on 17th, say, it might take a
Hmm.
little bit longer to sell. And the discount for that is greater. So I think that is the biggest thing that I've been seeing recently, kind of playing out in the market is that discount versus that premium is bigger than it's been since I've been around.
It's so interesting you say that because the same answer came up in another one of these episodes I did a couple months ago where the realtors had said similarly that in their perception, buyers want HGTV ready, done, turnkey, move in and go, and people are not willing to put in the work anymore themselves. And I don't know if it's because it's got so expensive or if people are just too busy or maybe just fail to have an imagination, but like it's an interesting dynamic. And also lesson to a seller, if you're looking to sell in the next year or two, then get dialed.
Mhm.
And if not, if you're a buyer and you're willing to, get your sleeves rolled up and do a little dirty work, like, wow, that might be a really good opportunity.
Yeah, you have buyers that are willing to take something on have some serious opportunities in the marketplace right now. And you're right. We have this at Windermere. We have this Windermere Ready program. It's basically you can borrow up to $100,000 to make improvements, do first and last on your apartment that you move into, or pay for your Airbnb to move out. Because homes that are vacant and staged sell much faster for much more money, and the return of a month and a half at an Airbnb, like that return is 4x. Where else in the
Yeah.
market? I know you say don't say you can make a lot of money really fast in real estate, but paint and moving out and staging, you can make 4x on your money in like
Yeah.
60 days.
Yeah. 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 Right on. Good stuff, Tyler. Well, thank you. And last question that I always end these episodes on, and I'm excited to hear your answer is if you could go back in time and revisit yourself on the first day that you became a realtor and started practicing, what piece of advice would you give yourself knowing what you know now?
I would say check your ego and go where the learning is. I would, mo most of the first part of my career was just Carmel Styler Realty, me and Carmel, just the two of us. She still is a great mentor and a great friend, and I learned so much from her. But when we came over to Windermere in 2018, and I am in a room with these powerhouses, just like by osmosis, I was taking in so much information. My first sales meeting made me like 5x better agent. I don't know how it happened. But go where the learning is and surround yourself with successful people that are willing to share that knowledge. That's the other important piece because there's places that people are a little closed off, but go where the learning is and check your ego and just do the work and you're going to be successful. Just keep at it. I mean, that's really the secret sauce.
As long as you care, of course.
As long as you care.
Yeah, right on. Well, Tyler, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you sharing with us. You were a great hang today. As always, thanks, buddy, for joining us. And if people want to get a hold of you, they can go online, search Tyler King, Windermere, Portland, and you'll see all sorts of ways to get a hold of Tyler. Again, Tyler, thank you so much for joining, buddy.
Hey, thanks so much for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
You got it, bud.